Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So many of you have been asking for a Barbarian Blademaster build update. So I've made one for module 32.5. The new changes here are the celestial mounts and insignias. In combat, in a party, this build will ultimately get all of your damage stats maxed out along with over 136,000 item level. This is of course with endgame gear, and I understand it can take quite a while to get there. Those of you who are still progressing, do not fear, I have added a gear progression table. So if you're just starting out in the game, this will be useful to you, and then you can work your way into advanced content and finally master content and work on getting these best in slot drops. Just be aware there are of course other nuances to builds. You can mix and match some things. You do not necessarily need exactly what I have to achieve similar results. And keep in mind, I do not have a ton of experience with Barbarian in the endgame content right now. So depending on the fight and the group setup, you might want to be switching up one or two of your abilities. That can be down to your practice and playstyle. But ultimately, it covers everything you need to know in order to perform fairly well in any boss fight. At the end of the document here, you can see the group optimization and where all of those stats are coming from, so they all end up maxed out. Again, keep in mind this is for module 32.5. If it's been 3 months later that this build's been posted, expect there to be module 33 with new updates and new gear items we can chase after. So the first section I'm going to jump to is powers. And there are multiple setups you can use here on Blademaster. The setup I have right now is a fairly friendly setup you can use for high rage generation and thus decent sustained damage output. But it does not have the peak potential that a build would have just by switching to escalating rage. This gives you that extra damage buff which will cause all your abilities to be significantly boosted. If you check my build document, there are 3 power setups. One for multi-target damage here, so just beating up groups of enemies with some notes on how to play it. Another for single target sustained damage output, the one I just mentioned I'm in right now. And then yes, that one for the maximum single target burst damage output with escalating rage. It's pretty much the only thing that changes, but the way you play it can change up quite a bit, as it's not so easy and you have to be very perfect with your timing in order to be able to make the most of artifact calls. Ends up a ton more challenging, having to manage that escalating rage, and it can ultimately end up hurting your sustained damage. But the most important thing is your artifact call rotation. If you're going to learn anything on Barbarian, it is this. The rest will just come with practice in the specific content you're in and the groups, when and how the boss phases. But the artifact call is absolutely essential. You will deal 3 to 4 times normal amount of damage. The majority of your damage will just come from this artifact call. You want to start by making sure you have full rage, this bar on the left. You will do this by attacking in combat. You can use at-wills, encounters, so on, and they will generate rage. Ideally, you want to only use at-wills to generate rage, and using your encounter powers while you're within rage, as you gain that massive damage boost to those encounter powers while within battle rage. In order to optimize your rage generation, you can use animation cancelling with your relentless slash. You can use this keybind if you're on the PC platform. It does not work for consoles, but the manual way to do it is to hold down 2 opposite movement keys. Then you can hold down your at-will and you can spam the sprint key, and this will allow you to animation cancel it, effectively giving you a lot more attacks per second and so a lot more rage generation per second. Again, if you use the keybind, you need to spam click the button in order to trigger it. You can't just hold it down. But once you have full rage and you get the buff from relentless slash here, you'll want to go into the artifact call. So if it's the very first artifact call in a boss fight, you can generate this rage using piñatas just at the boss gate. Or you can ask your team to wait 5-10 seconds at the beginning of the boss before you do the artifact call. So the order is a relentless slash, rage, artifact. your punishing charge, your bloodletter, your frenzy, your daily power, your belt item, and your mount power, and then you can use bloodletter, punishing, and frenzy again. You need to do that all within 10 seconds. It's simply an order you need to practice, and out of all the classes it's not exactly that complex. You are required on your build to have 2 mount insignia bonuses, a cavalry's haste and a tactician's precision. You can find a list of which mounts actually give those easily in my mount document linked below. So that's pretty much it. For multi-target, I like to use this setup with not so fast hidden daggers and axe storm, and yes, with relentless battle rage. Even in multi-target, try to flank your enemies by making the arc at their feet become purple. That's vital you do it in boss fights. And then you can use like hidden daggers to generate rage at the start. Once you get 50 rage, you can immediately enter that battle rage. And then you can just use your encounter powers and you generate a ton of damage. And otherwise, use your relentless slash. Don't cast hidden daggers back to back. You'll just be wasting its extra damage hit. But you can be really strong in multi-target when the enemies are grouped up. But that's the basics on how to play Barbarian Blademaster. Again, you can read further details in the document here. Multi-target, single-target sustain damage setup, and the single-target burst damage setup. We'll now go through the sections of the document, where first I showcase the build can get you all these stats maxed out, and it also has some good damage bonuses too. These are the stats out of combat, and then this is a description of what kind of stats you are prioritizing for damage output. You have your main damage stat just here, which is directly affected by your item level, plus a little bonus from your weapons. You then have the magnitude of the powers. You have debuffs that you can put on enemies, such as from your Trample of the Fallen. In multi-target, you trigger it with Not So Fast. In single-target, you trigger it with Punishing Charge. You absolutely want to have this one. Perhaps if somebody else is already using it in the team because there are multiple barbarians, you could switch to like Steel Blitz or Barbed Strikes if you don't have those stats maxed out yet. You have enemy stat reductions, primarily from companion enhancements here, but usually supports will have them. You have damage boosts, such as from these specific companions here, certain powers and abilities giving that, along with an overload, and even some gear pieces. And then your primary power and combat advantage, critical strike, crit severity, accuracy, and then a bit of a description here how those stats work with the item level and ratings. You only need to get these total percentages as high as possible. The ratings simply help you get those total amounts. That's it. You can read the tooltips on them there. It's not important to get them into green like this. That just shows you've got the maximum amount from this, which is 60% here for crit severity, 50% for crit strike. But in terms of gear progression, you can see the table right here in the document, which goes through what you want to be getting at stage 1 as soon as you've hit level 20. This is all really accessible stuff that you will start to be able to obtain after you've done a few random queues. You want to be doing these random queues to experience that content and obtain these seals. In Protector's Enclave, the main hub map, you go to the Seven Suns Custom Market and speak to this guy, and that's where you'll get the majority of your starter gear. Things like rings and weapons, you'll want to go to the new campaign, which is important that it's module 32, because you have this grace period of accessing it regardless of your item level. You go there, you do quests, and you'll obtain your artifact weapons on green, and then you can start leveling them up, eventually getting them to Celestial if you wish. If Barbarian's like an alt character, then you can very readily run with the Void Touch or Xeraxian weapons for boss fights instead. But in stage 2, this is where you're jumping into advanced content in most cases, getting items like the Fractal Helmet, Bulwark of Zul'Karite. In stage 3, you're going into master content, Shackles of Divinity, Soul Harvest. And on stage 4, that's simply just getting the remaining 3 celestial gear pieces. You can indeed technically go with the Celestial Boots, but these are going to reduce your hit points by 20%, which may just cause you to die more often than it's worth using them. Additionally, the big stat boost from these boots is kind of needed to max out your stats, but you could potentially do a bit of rebalancing. When you look at the bottom section here, we have some breathing room with some extra stats here and there. But it's not bad to have a little bit of extra stats, because sometimes you're in a group which maybe doesn't have Mystic Aura, or maybe doesn't run Portobello, or you want to have your accuracy closer to the cap even though you only have 2 stacks of your Masterwork set, and so on. But yeah, I hope this gear progression helps you regardless of where you're at in the game. This is stuff you can be going for, and the rest of the items in this build is just basic stuff that's going to be helpful to anybody, no matter where you're at. Even if the enchantments are only green or mythic, you would want to be going with these ones to help boost your stats in most cases. Just do note of some further details listed here, such as using the Astral Raider gloves for scaled content. These are a massive boost to give you that extra multiplicative damage when you're scaled down. Gear modifications, I keep forgetting to include the ones for weapons, but these are armor kits and jewels here, simply listed: 2 critical strike, 2 crit severity, and 4 combat advantage. The weapons you will have to go to the Forge Master to change, but main hand, brash strike for single target, offhand, combat advantage, recharge speed. Looking at enchantments, you can see what we have here. You can potentially make newer enchantments work, ones from like the campaign, but these are the standard ones, generally more readily available and cheaper. Even though they give slightly less total stats, you can absolutely make do with them. I still recommend the Lightning Flash here. It's far more accessible versus the Swift Synergy, which does have 1,000 item level more, same amount of stats, although it does miss the extra little bit of damage hit that Lightning Flash can give. But because this thing's limited to a lockbox, I don't really see it's worth upgrading to it. In terms of artifacts, other than the primary one, these are just stat sticks. They're here for the item level, 2600. Ideally, you'll be going with ones that give you actual damage stats, like the Demon Skull, full damage stats. As for primary, this is going to change depending on the group, and you're going to want a few of them. In the document, they're listed here. This is like the rankings for in a dungeon, and then this for a trial. You want to have quite a few of them so you can fit in the groups. Everybody has to use a different one, and that's for artifact calls. Everybody uses them at the same time and then does their rotation to maximize their damage output, which again, you're dealing like 4 to 5 times your normal amount of damage within 10 seconds. That's where you use your mount power and daily power, along with 2 sets of encounter powers on pretty much any class. Moving on to boons, campaign boons, guild boons. You're again just going for ones that give you stats that help with your build. Blessed Advantage is pretty great here, and so is Blessed Resilience. Even though they trigger on a chance, they will be up very reliably if you have a heal over time healer. You want to get boosts like Forte here, stamina again can be nice, action points, recharge, but make sure you're prioritizing these ones which straight up give you offensive stats to help you cap out, along with the extra damage against certain enemy types depending on what content you play. Lingering Medicine here can be great for the heal over time if you say didn't want to use a Stone of Health, and you use a rejuvenating potion instead. Guild boons here, we've got the accuracy, defense, and the revive sickness. If your guild doesn't have accuracy, say it's crit strike instead, then just switch up an enchantment. Use an accuracy enchantment instead of the crit strike one. In terms of companions, a summoned companion will generally be a support companion in endgame groups. Of course, you can check my companion document if you want to look at what are the latest top damage dealers, if you want to be topping the damage boards. But again, usually they will want like one of these top 10 in order to support the team, many of which help you get all these stats you need so you can improve your damage. These are listed here as well. As for companion gear, simply from Red Harvest, or you get them through the Celestial Companion lockbox, which people sell and you can buy them on the auction. As for companion bonuses, You absolutely want to have the Tamed Raptor from the Reaper store, the Neverwinter Knight from Zen Market or auction, or even the Trade Bar store, Minsk from the Zen Market or the auction. There's a sale right now where both of these are available, and a pack comes around every now and again, otherwise it's on the auction. There's the Batiri from the Reaper store, and then there's the Book Imp. This is for accuracy and combat advantage. Alternative is Azos Fezim or the Dark Dealer. However, bugged right now is Lysera. This, I believe, is still stacking where everybody can use her. So if you're running content and you take damage, everybody could have this and trigger that debuff on the boss, stacking it up. But I expect it to get fixed when the devs really become aware of this and get their act together to do something about it. So it's not something I would invest in right now. Also, acute senses, this could change depending if teams want support. Could go to like armor break, but usually tanks and healers would have that covered. Now moving on to mounts. There are multiple insignia bonuses you can use, but the most important is 1 Cavalry's Haste and 1 Tactician's Precision. You also do want an Enchanter's Hex, because this is going to trigger every time you use Punishing Charge and Crescendo. Just a little bit of extra damage on top. We have an Artificer's Enticement. This just helps to make sure our encounter powers are ready for the artifact call, just for that extra cooldown whenever you use the artifact. And then Executioner's Covenant, just to help cap out those ratings a little bit easier. There are of course other insignia bonuses that are useful. Some I have listed here, and in terms of the exact amounts I have, you do not need those. You can again check my mount document for which mounts have that bonus as well. In terms of the exact insignias, that's just 2 skill, 15 brutality, 3 dominance. Collar bonuses are all just here. The important one is encounter power damage and crit severity. For single target mount powers, the best right now is the Demonic Gravehound. With Celestial mounts being upgraded, this now gives over 4,000 magnitude with Infernal Pounce. But there are alternatives: Big Beast Hand, Grubshank, Legendary Giant Toad, and so on. You ideally want something that's going to deal physical damage, because our physical stat is usually higher than our magical. As for equip bonuses, you can go with Ferocity for maximum damage or Pack Tactics for team support. With consumables, we just have Sunlord's Gift Elixir from the Vault of Piety, Do Your Invoking and get it here, Squash Soup from events or the auction, Fast Potency Crafting or the auction, or Ratatouille from the Guild Merchant. In terms of belt items, Forger's Box, way to go with the power, Owlbear figurine, Dungeon Master event or the Zen Market sale, comes up every now and again, Stone of Health or potions. Like we mentioned, rejuvenation potions combined with lingering medicine is very useful. We started using it back in Zemnid's Reliquary, just because of all that damage over time. This helps massively. For ability scores, strength and dexterity all the way, you just put those 6 points in each. If for some reason your critical severity gets maxed out, you could put a few points in charisma instead of it. Race, right now I have Wood Elf for 5% critical strike. But you can switch to a different race that also gives damage stats just fine. You might need to do a little bit of rebalancing to make that fit and to make up for the missing critical strike. But yeah, that's it for the build. Hopefully it helps you figure out what kind of gear to be going for and how to get all your stats maxed out. In terms of the power setups, I definitely recommend experimenting around for yourselves, but focus in on having a good solid rotation for the artifact call in those boss fights. It is the most important thing on any damage dealer. But with that said, thanks all for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.